So this is, hey Christy, how are you?
Great. How are you doing?
It's been a wild ride.
Yeah, for sure. The whole world went upside down. What's up with that? I feel like I'm in Watchmen or something.
For I had a thought of doing a piece where it's somebody in a cave somewhere, and
Mhm.
they're like, "What do you mean? I did it 30 minutes ago?" And then it cuts to the backdrop, and it's like all COVID news
Oh my God.
outbreaks. It's like, no, I did it like actually for them. I did it. I saw the first case was back in like November.
Right. Yeah.
It's like I did it 3 months ago, 4 months ago.
It's so weird. It's
Yeah.
it's going to be weird because I think there's going to be a new normal that's going to
Mm-hmm.
happen from all this. And unfortunately, so many freelancers and creatives and people with small businesses are going to be probably hit the most
Yeah.
during all of this. So it's important to raise up the community and let them know that this is an opportunity for new beginnings, possibly tackling projects that you wouldn't have had time for before, or just, kind of revisiting your model, whatever that may be, and seeing where you can go with that.
Yeah, we
So,
have to. We run a couple retail businesses, and we are having to
yeah,
shift right now because we are very event based.
right.
We really needed that foot traffic, and that's changing. So it's been trying to figure out platforms, trying to figure out space, trying to figure out which is honestly projects we had talked about, like you said earlier. So
Right.
I've been doing that. I've been like now that I'm home, I can like take care of the house.
Mm-hmm.
Mow the lawn a little more, plant this, plant that. I feel like I'm playing Stardew Valley or Harvest Moon in real life.
Wow, man. It's crazy how you start looking at video games and you're like, which one am I in? How bad? I hope I'm not like in The Last Man or something.
Yeah, for real.
Oh, so that's where pop culture becomes really interesting because then you start kind of comparing things and you start looking at the human condition in these situations and it becomes like The Walking Dead a little bit.
Yeah, what's number one on Netflix right now?
The Tiger King.
Tiger King, and then Outbreak was up there for a little bit. Contagion was
Yes,
up there for a little
yes.
bit. Uh, just seeing what people are diving into has been interesting.
Right. It was weird. It was like always, so I'm not a huge like murder documentary drama person.
Okay.
That's a little dark for me. But I do like stuff about that's like more fact based or historical or of course comics nerds and inspirational creatives, that kind of thing. I did watch Tiger King though, and I was
Okay.
like, oh my God. I don't know if you've seen that yet,
Mm-mm.
but
Sounds like a
it
roller coaster. I've picked up enough.
and literally, I don't think they need to do anything else as far as the documentary. I think that one alone literally covered every gamut of the worst of society that we're great.
It's an interesting story that like became a gigantic meme
Yeah.
on the worldwide whatevers, and then
Yep.
especially with the times that we're in, it's like, oh, this is fascinating. Like, this caught on like so hard.
It did. I think it's a little odd. People are kind of idolizing these people. Like the celebrity is becoming idolized, and no one in that film is to be idolized. Let's
Mm-mm.
be honest. And
Yeah,
and
there's
everyone's kind of like, oh, he's going to pardon him and look at it. And I'm like, wait, 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 what are we doing? We're not doing that. No, no, no. This was not. You missed the whole point of the documentary.
yeah, it's a wild world out there. It's because I feel it's the story about like the animals is really important, but it's just kind of got
Oh
overshadowed by
yeah,
these big personalities. But now that it's
yeah,
long as that information is out there, and if it's hooked onto something wacky to like really sink it in, like let it sink in, and then we can start making
yeah.
changes.
I read an article that a lot of the animals that were at one of the exotic parks actually got rescued.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think it said something like 40 or 30 of the tigers were rescued. So I'm hoping that was accurate. But you never know. There's a lot of clickbait out there, so you have to triple check everything.
If you're gonna start putting animals back in the wild, now's a good time for it. Not a lot of people roaming around, not a lot of traffic. You know what I mean? 'Cause I heard they're coming, like in New York and stuff like that. Animals are coming closer and closer into the city.
Yeah, a lot of cities I've been reading about nature's kind of, and that's what nature does. It's just overtaking.
Mm-hmm.
I know there's a lot. I don't know if you've had that where you live, where you're at, but we've had a lot of those mosquito or crane flies or whatever,
Mm-hmm. Oh
like
yeah.
thousands,
Oh okay.
and
Yeah, we
we've
had a
never
bunch.
had
I
them
thought it was just us.
before.
Oh.
No, like being attacked, like can't even leave any of the lights at the front door on just because it's just a swarm, and it's just I think it's a product of, people not mowing their lawns as much and not
Oh
walking
yeah.
as much and no
Mm-hmm.
car traffic, and then it's just weird how nature's kind of like pollinating and rebuilding. It's like, okay, I feel like I'm in Planet of the Apes a little bit.
Hey, did you see the newer Planet of the Apes movies? The new
I did.
set.
I've seen them all.
What did you think?
So I really like them. I actually really enjoyed what they did with the newer ones. I think they really
Okay.
focused on the correct story. I love the direction of it too, and it's a classic tale of man versus animal,
Mm-hmm.
and animals have feelings, and the connection between humanity and those kinds of things. Humanity can be found in a lot of things, not
Okay.
just humans. The Tim Burton one I thought had good elements, but bad casting. I think the actual astronauts, like Mark Wahlberg and all them, no. Estella Warren, but we can just go ahead and no on that. But if we just had the apes for that, and Tim Roth was
Okay.
brilliant in that.
That's the one I
And then
saw a while back.
I saw all those. I saw those in theaters, and then of course the older ones are from the '60s.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I've seen all those, and that's
Okay.
Charlton Heston and
Mm-hmm.
Roddy McDowall.
I remember seeing bits of that. I don't think I've seen the whole thing yet.
There's 6 films altogether originally, I think.
Oh wow. That's right, because you do a lot of the movie stuff as well.
hmm I love classic sci-fi is my favorite
Okay.
genre and fantasy, and that's kind of what I grew up on.
Oh, okay. So what do you think of the news? Like, so I look at the movie trends now where there's a lot of like reboots, a lot of like remakes, a lot of like adaptations.
hmm
But we're kind of still in the superhero genre
Right.
phase. Because I remember growing up, there's a little bit of adventure. There's way more like sci-fi,
Right.
like modern day set sci-fi, nothing too spacey. If I remember correctly, this is what I just kind of grew up with.
Right.
So how do you feel about the current like zeitgeist?
I love it because it's like our generation has grown up and they're making films, and they're making
Okay.
films based upon what they watched, and there's a lot of fantasy and a lot of sci-fi. And I don't mind experimental sci-fi. I don't mind taking it to the next level of belief. There's some really independent films that are just like, this is totally Blade Runner. Like this, like I
Okay.
could feel that. And then some of my favorite films. I don't know if you can see it, it's kind of cut off here, but Labyrinth,
Oh, okay.
fantasy, legend. Other than, of course, the Holy Trilogy, which is Star Wars. Um,
Oh, is that it?
but
Is that your holy
yeah,
trilogy? Okay.
film wise. But we're talking film. That's the stuff that was that I watched. Of course, Never Ending Story and all of Disney and classic science fiction. And that's the stuff in old Ray Harryhausen films where he did a lot of the creature effects. And that's
Okay.
the stuff I grew up off and was inspired by.
Yeah,
Just
I've noticed.
thinking outside.
Yeah, I've noticed there's been a pushback to like props and physical things mixed in with
Yeah,
CG. Because I think we went a little too far CG, and then there's only so much we can do with it, and now we
right.
gotta pull it back in.
The perfect example, I would say, if you were watching some of the fight scenes in Phantom Menace, for instance, where the Gungans are fighting, that was all CG, and at the time, that was at the height of the technology at the time. It looks very dated. You go and look up Ray Harryhausen or Jason and the Argonauts,
Hmm.
and it still looks crisp and clean. Clash of the Titans looks amazing.
Yeah.
The original, with Harry Hamlin, the original, and the
Oh, there
Laurence
was a new
Olivier.
one.
hmm There
Okay.
was a newer one, which was fun. That was fun.
Yeah. Sometimes they're just meant to be fun.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of films like that too, where people like, you know, I'll totally say this. A lot of people didn't like Tom Cruise's Mummy movie.
Okay.
The movie's a straight, to me, it was a straight popcorn flick. It's a
Okay.
popcorn action fun movie. Dark Phoenix, popcorn action fun movie with a female lead. That's it. I didn't go in there like with my comic book going, okay, nope, nope. You know, I just went in and just enjoyed it.
You can't. Yeah,
There's,
you can't.
yeah.
You can't go in there with like a pre-made script from another source.
Well, you're going to end up being disappointed,
Mm-hmm.
and people are going to have their own interpretations of things. And I've definitely learned that, especially in the reboot culture, which I'm not a big fan of. I would prefer inspired by, um, but an original story than completely rebooting things. But that's just my take on it. So there's not too many reboots where I was like, oh, yeah, that's the one, you know.
Yeah, I heard someone say that there's a generation of directors and storytellers that are just gonna miss out because,
Hmm.
like, I think the our current movie structure is they're playing like a little too safe. I feel they
Hmm.
want to keep it to these known properties, keep it to these for sure money makers because the budgets are just so massive now. The marketing gets involved in this,
Yeah.
the special effects. Like, you have to make all that money back. That's a lot of money to make back.
It's a lot of responsibility for
Mm-hmm.
filmmakers, for the crew you have to bring in, and then you
Mm-hmm.
have this whole special effects team. And you know, I have friends who work in special effects, computer effects, who work practical as well. And there's advantages to both. You know,
Mm-hmm.
on screen, the practical is usually going to look a lot better and stand the test of time. But when you have a deadline, a hard deadline to get a film done, sometimes you have to rely on CGI to knock it
Yep.
out. You know,
To get through it.
and yeah, and it takes a lot of stress off of, you know, animators too, because you're not hand drawing everything. But I watched Fire and Ice the other night, so
Oh
I
yeah.
love my Ralph Bashki. I have to watch my Frank Frazetta.
Stuff is
Oh my goodness.
gorgeous.
Hmm.
But it takes time. But yeah, the budget gets really, really out of control.
It does. I can't even imagine like the Avenger Endgame alone. It's like what?
Yeah, at that level. But they bring amazing things. But it's
Yeah.
getting so big, and I can feel these smaller movies, smaller like stories and stuff like that gets missed out.
Yeah, they get swallowed up a little bit in the roller coaster that the big action films can bring. I think there's a place for all of it, all kinds of creativity and expression, because there's going to be times where you want to go and sit in front of a big 3D picture and just zone out and
Yeah.
just be taken away to a different environment. And then sometimes you want a more intimate connection with a
Yeah.
different character, so you want something more dramatic, more independent. So I think there's places for it all, but I think it all should be shared, you know.
I guess that's what Netflix has been doing. Like Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu,
Yeah.
they're smaller budget and they can take more risk because Netflix is like banging everything out.
Netflix is they have some things that are like kind stories I've never seen before. Different countries like Romanian productions
Mm-hmm.
and you know Korean productions, like really bringing that to the forefront. Lots of Bollywood, you know, stuff that we don't really have access to like we should over here. I feel, and I know Netflix is in debt because of all the money they give out to these
Yeah.
productions. But I think for them it's a calculated risk, and I think it's really interesting to see how much they're pouring into like independent stories and just raising up those creators and letting them know that they can just experiment and be weird and it's okay. And
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, the 80s was basically
Mm-hmm.
fantasy and be weird. And,
Yeah.
you know,
Because you can do that kind of stuff there.
hmm
And you can do long
that
form
was a
too,
lot
which
of
is
fun.
nice.
Hmm. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I've been watching a bunch of stuff. What I'm watching currently is completely random too on Netflix. I'm watching from finishing up the Adventures of Sabrina, the Chilling Adventures,
Okay.
and then I'm watching Schitt's Creek, which is hilarious, and just a ton of other things too.
That's great. So
How about you? Are you watching anything right now that's fun?
uh, I'm just catching up on some old things.
Nice.
Because I'm still working from home. Like, I gotta have a set schedule.
Hmm.
But now, not really. We kind of going back and binge watching, just having stuff in the background. And we've
Right.
discussed like old television shows and things like that. And I'll throw on a random movie here and there.
Right.
Yeah, because I have
That's
a I
always
have a I
fun.
have a list, so I was like, I'm gonna dive through this finally.
Yep. Well, it's the best time to do that, and you never know what inspires you or gives you
Mm-hmm.
content for any number of things. So,
Yeah, that's true. What did we watch last night? The movie? Oh, we just watched
Princess and the Frog.
Princess and the Frog. Like I
oh,
remember, I
that's
usually sometimes I put stuff on and I don't like watch it intently because I'm working on something. But this time, like I sat and watched. I'm like, oh yeah, I was remembering details again. I was like, oh, this is cool. So it's been a
and
good time
that's
to
the
like.
last hand-drawn Disney film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and I remember watching one of the characters like bounce around. I was like, who did that character? That's a lot of work. Like everybody else is like nice and smooth and slick, and this character is like just jiggling all over the place. It's like
That's
that
how you
person
do it.
deserves. Yeah, that person deserves. There's just some mad props.
Well, Disney was a big inspiration for me as a kid. I'm sure with a plethora of other kids too. When I was growing up, Sleeping Beauty was my favorite, and I was constantly drawing that, and I was constantly reading the funnies,
Oh
the
yeah.
comic strips on Sundays, and doing Yogi Bear and Hagar the Horrible and Garfield, and that's kind of how I started drawing. And I had this thing for unicorns. I
Oh
love
right on.
legends.
That makes total sense.
Every like 6 or 7 year old girl, I think, had a thing for
Yeah,
unicorns in the 80s.
I
Lisa
think I,
Frank.
I think I it's it's one of those movies where I saw it later, and then it made a lot of people made sense to me. I was like, oh, you saw this movie at this age, and that affected. Oh, okay, I gotcha. Because
Right, right.
I grew up weird because I watched a lot of American television, but I didn't watch a lot of American movies, and I grew up with like anime and kung fu flicks that were I'm assuming Chinese with three sets of subtitles beneath it. It was like Chinese,
Nice.
something Vietnamese, and then English. And then I think the dub was in something else. I was like, oh, okay, this is cool. So that's what I grew up with. And so
I love that.
when I met certain people, I didn't get certain behaviors and certain like trends because I just wasn't tapped into it until I watched the stuff later. I was like, oh, okay, I get it now.
Right.
It's
I love
interesting
that.
because our pop culture defines who we are, right? They
Hmm.
defines like a whole generation of kids.
It really does. It really does. I mean, Saturday morning cartoons, everyone, bowl of cereal, sat down, and, I always had a connection with film, even as a
Okay,
young kid. And a film was always like a reward. Like, if you get these
okay,
chores done, if you get your homework done, if you get these things done, you can pick something out. And a big influence in me was actually my uncle. He had the magic closet of science fiction and fantasy films. So he had everything from the entire Godzilla collection
oh wow,
um, on VHS and like Laserdisc. He had some of my favorite films I grew up with were Them and Day of the Triffids,
okay.
which are very random films, but amazing films, and I don't want them to be remade at all. Loved Mysterious Island, Journey Center of the Earth with Pat Boone and James Mason.
Ooh,
Not the Brendan Fraser one wasn't any good. Watch the original. Take you
okay,
back. It's great. See, I can nerd out on this all the time. Oh my god.
that's
What are
great.
some of the things that it may have influenced you with your creativity and your art and things?
Oh, most of that has been growing up with the role playing books. What was it called? Vampire. There we go.
Nice.
So that was the kind of artwork I found first originally, and then it was
Mm,
a lot of Marvel trading cards, Marvel books. I was tracing over X-Men books for the most part, so I forget who it was at
no.
the time.
Mm,
I was into the stories, and I'm into a lot of different stories. So I follow like pro wrestling, which is very story, and then like the comics and movies, TV shows, a little bit of everything. And so like a
I
lot of
love it.
yeah, anime, Dragon Ball Z. I remember I pointed out to my wife. I was like, "Oh, you mean my Dragon Ball Z eye?" She's like, "What are you talking about?" And I just drew one real quick. She's like, "You're right." I was like, "Yep."
Yeah, tell her I said hi.
Uh, Chrissy, say hi.
Um, no, I
Yep.
love all that. Pop culture is such a, you know, I still grew up in the time period where if you liked comics or if you're a girl and you like sci-fi,
Uh,
you couldn't tell anybody because people thought you were very odd and strange, and there was a lot of stereotypes associated with it. Um, I was never one to really play that game. I was pretty gregarious even as a child. But I remember a time where it wasn't cool to be the nerd,
oh,
and
yeah.
I kind of grew up with that. So,
That kind of world. The world's changed, right? Oh my god.
yeah. Oh, gosh. Yeah. Oh, my God. That was like
The
a
the biggest
million
thing
years
to me
ago.
was I sat in the theater and I was like, is Ego the living planet? They made a movie. They put him in a movie. This is the
The
most
most
obscure.
random.
Yeah. And Howard the Duck is back. Like, what
It's like,
is this?
I expected Jason the Spartax, and I was like waiting for this big fleet armada of militia coming on, and then it's the living planet. And I'm like, oh. I'm like,
Yeah.
wait a minute, what's happening?
I saw that and I was like, oh, this is gonna get. This is. I hope there's more of
It's
that.
getting weird.
I love I love that. Wish there was more space opera out of Marvel because the Marvel
Hmm.
comic universe, their space opera stuff is amazing. It's so epic and
Hmm.
big. It could be like Lord of the Rings level of just grandiose, huge.
So when it comes to Marvel, do you have a favorite of the characters or the franchise that you've really connected with?
I grew up with the X Men stuff, which was a great wild ride. So it's individual stories. I had a subscription. And then it was like Age of Apocalypse, Fatal Attractions, all these big arcs, and then
No.
at a certain point, what happened to me was the arcs kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and longer
Mm.
and like back to back to back, and I was just like, I just can't keep up anymore. And so I had to dip out of there, and then I was reading. I got into like manga, more of it because it's long form, but they end, so I can like
Right.
dig into a series and then move on to something else.
That's great though. Yeah. It's always good to have closure when
Mm-hmm.
you're really vested in stuff. There's a comic book I read called Bayou. Beautiful book.
Okay.
It has no closure. And it drove me nuts because the book's so amazing and gorgeous and well written and almost creepy spooky
Okay.
that the comic writer hasn't had a chance to finish the last bit of it. So I highly recommend it, but just be prepared.
Yeah.
There's
For that.
ah. But yeah, for comics, when I was a kid, my first comics I really got into, of course, I read the Disney comics, and
Okay.
then I had Ren and Stimpy comics for a time. But then I got hardcore into the Uncanny X-Men, and
Okay.
Gambit and Psylocke are my favorite characters.
What so what arcs and what storylines like drove you to those two characters the most?
Really, not the story as much. I liked Gambit because I was a girl and I thought he's suave and charming
Mm-hmm.
and cute, and I had a crush on a cartoon. I fully admit that. And there was just something, every time Gambit showed up, he took care of it. It's kind of like Wolverine did the same thing. Wolverine
Mm-hmm.
kind of cut through it, where Gambit charmed his way through it. And then Psylocke, for me, her backstory is sad and
Yeah.
fantastical at the same time.
It's
Going
it's
from
it's so big. It's the craziest backstory.
like I will actually say I think that could be a film. Definitely if they do it correctly, the Psylocke story. I don't like the casting of Olivia Munn. I think you need a true Japanese actress to
Mm-hmm.
play her Psylocke form. And then,
Yeah.
of course, if you go to the traditional Betsy Braddock character, you just really need to bring all that in and Quanon and all that kind of stuff.
Who
There's a
could do
lot of
that
interesting
movie?
stuff.
Who could do that kind
Um,
of movie? Do you think?
I really like the girl that was in Pacific Rim, the Japanese girl who was
Mm-hmm.
in that.
Ooh.
She was she's lovely. I love her. You just really need that representation
Yeah.
because it just feels more authentic. I think there's an amazing um, pool of actresses you could pull from to be in that for sure.
What kind of director
I'm
or cinematographer? How does it look?
Ooh, how does it look? Oh man, I'm making it now. Okay, if I'm making it now.
Like, is it like super
um,
dramatic? Is it? Could it has to be kind of crazy. It could be like
it
crazy
has
and
to be
bright because
mixed.
her, if you,
It
especially
has
you
to be
stick to
kind
her
of weird.
costume, because her
Yeah.
costume's outrageous. And the what are they called? The Marauders? No, the machine people.
I can't remember.
Reavers. There you go. I
Yes.
think
Okay.
those people were like outrageous as well. So you can't be.
It has to be kind of weird. I think most comic book films are better when they're kind of weird.
Yeah.
Like, like Doctor Strange to me and Thor are my
Hmm.
favorite of the films because they have that kind of odd element to it, like something kind of bizarre goes on in it, but it works. Guardians has that, but they mixed more humor with it.
Yeah.
So they kind of, placate it like that. But it works. It totally works. And I think if you're going to do Psylocke, you have to have drama. I think, but definitely kind of suspense. I'm not saying go super dark with it or anything. Don't do Elektra version of Psylocke. Let's
Yeah.
not do that. But I think there's, with the right direction and with the right vision, there's something really interesting that could be made from that story for sure.
Yeah. Like I wish there was more heavy genre pieces.
Hmm.
Like let's go all the way creepy and give me
Yep.
like Cronenberg kind of uncomfortableness. You know what
Oh.
I mean? Like just make it just
Ooh.
a little creepy. Don't play it safe.
So Nightbreed, I just watched that too, and
Okay.
that like I know that's Clive Barker, but Cronenberg's in that. I love Cronenberg. Dead Ringer is on Hulu
Okay.
or Amazon Prime, and that's about as creepy as you can get. But yeah, Cronenberg is an amazing director. I love his films. I have been freaked out in his films, but in the best way.
Yeah.
Or the
Like
crew that did Mandy, Mandy with
okay.
Nicolas Cage. Have you seen that?
Mm-mm.
Oh man, I think you guys would really like that one. You should
Okay.
check that out. That one's completely like off the chart crazy, but it's like an orchestra.
Uh
You're playing Bach with an electric guitar.
okay.
That's
Interesting.
what it feels like. It's crazy.
That's cool. Yeah, there's a lot of different moods out there. And
Hmm.
I don't know, we'll see what comes out. Like if this whole thing keeps up, we'll have more and
Wow.
more because there's gonna be, like you said, there's gonna
Yeah.
be a new normal.
Yep. And then we're inside until in Dallas County until May 30th, right? Didn't we get
Yeah.
extended that far?
Mm-hmm.
And then who was I reading? Someone staying closed or someone's canceled until June
Oh,
29th. I forgot something
there's
came up on my feed.
there's a couple shows and events that either canceled or I think one show, I forget which one, their facility is being used as a hospital,
Oh,
and
that's
so it's
good.
like we can't have shows. So and even if after everything's like kind of back to normal, the facility probably still be used. So it's like we're gonna be a while before we can get back into it. So they just
Yeah, that's
postpone. They just like
crazy.
we'll just wait and see.
It's absolutely crazy. But it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Staying home's keeping people safe, and the biggest thing, anyone that I talk to, so before everyone had much busier schedules, and I used to tell people who felt like they were never creative, I used to say, if you have 10 minutes a day, you have enough time to dedicate to growing your craft.
Mm-hmm.
But now that we have this time now, there's so many tutorials, there's
Yeah.
programs out there, there's master classes, there's all kinds of things now that you can join or have free trials that you can be a part of that can inspire or that you can learn a new skill set. And I say take this time to, and I loved hearing that you're on a schedule. That's awesome. I think people who are creative need to have a schedule, a structure.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not for the full day, but maybe committing to 4 to 6 hours a day, because
Yeah.
I know I'm guilty of this where I'm like, whoo, the daydreaming wants to take over. Um, but I think that's important to just grow a skill set or work on something that you just didn't have the time to work on before. There's no excuse.
Yeah.
We're in it.
So it's been Mostly I've been just been focusing stuff around the house.
Yeah, and
Because
that's
I
good too.
always
Like
have to
getting all
produce.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it hasn't been so. It's been interesting, to say the very
yeah.
least.
It is. It's different and it's weird. And my the only people that are completely thrilled about everything are my dogs,
Mm-hmm.
which aren't really people, but they're like kind of like
Oh,
little furry people.
they're
Uh,
they're weird little personalities that run through the house. They live
oh
with
yeah,
you.
they love it.
Yeah.
They're in literally dog heaven right now. So
That's awesome.
I have three fur babies, so they're all very
Oh,
happy.
that's great.
Yeah, good stuff.
Has your when you take the dogs out, has the neighborhood been pretty quiet?
It is. In the mornings, there's a lot more people, but in my neighborhood, I've noticed a lot of social distancing.
Okay.
So that's good. So people walk their dogs, but they're like more than 6 feet apart from each other. Um, and then we walk our dogs too. So
Okay. That's
yeah,
good. I haven't been out too much, so I can't. I can't. I just hear music, so who knows where that's coming from out there.
I've jumped in the car and I've not gotten out of the car, but driven around
Oh,
with
okay.
even with the dogs as well. Just sometimes it's just good to be able to feel like there is some kind of freedom. You're not stuck in
Yeah.
indoors the whole time because you can get cabin fever from that. So I know for me, I like if it's the sun's out, I like going out sometimes at night. Not too late,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, but I'll go out for like take like a 20-minute drive and just go around.
Yeah, I saw a thing where they were talking about how like mental stimulation helps with like depression and things like that. And so
Hmm.
this is like unfortunately a prime little bubble to make that happen. But like you said,
Yeah.
giving yourself a schedule, things to do, accomplishing things. I think it's always important to
Oh yeah.
set goals that you can accomplish, but make it. I have big goals, but I have small goals to get there. So every time I finish
Right.
that thing, like cool, it's done. I did something. I feel good about it. On to the next one.
Yeah, that's the way to do it because if you feel like you just have the big goals, you're going to feel like you're running an endless marathon. You have to see the finish line.
Yeah.
So having and I'm built that way too where I have to see like the little milestones and I have to get there because that's going to inspire me to get to the next step and just
Hmm.
keeping on it.
Yeah, I gotta keep on moving. Especially for us creatives, we get locked up sometimes in our
Oh
self
yeah.
doubt. All these projects, is it any good?
Yes. Oh man. I
Yeah,
could do a whole show about that alone. All the stuff you tell yourself as a creative that's completely insane and untrue.
yeah, the level of anxiety. Because in the art
Yeah.
club we have a lot of variety of different people with different skill sets and
Hmm.
time into their art career, art path.
Right.
And so everybody gets to that point. I was like, I remember saying it's normal. It's like, is it really normal? It's like it's a common thing. You're not alone,
Yeah.
and it's okay. Like you can get through it. You can move on. It's I always try to tell people make sure you learn the right lessons out of the experience, and then move forward from it, and make sure you learn those lessons properly. And just remember,
Absolutely.
but I also tell people it's like you have to. It's I'm sorry, it sucks, but you have to go through it. I can talk to you all day long, but it won't really be driven home until you experience it. But just remember, it's gonna be okay.
Community is important, and with the impact on events and conventions, because I know
Yeah.
we know hundreds of people between the both of us, at least, if not more than that, who are literally make their living from going to cons, and also that's the bulk of their social activity.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important to check on those people and just to let them know that it's hey, you need to talk. And this is why I love technology the way it is now
Mm-hmm.
because you can do stuff like this. We can
Yep.
talk face to face. I feel like I did my thing for the day and connected with people, and that's the fun thing, and that's what's really important. It's just like little things that you don't realize. And of
Yeah.
course, I personally like meditate, where I'll go deep quiet and I'll listen to music or I'll just kind of shut my mind off and make myself for like 10 minutes close
Hmm.
my eyes and not do anything
Yeah.
and just chill out. And
That's
you
a good way
have
to do
to.
it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just do the calm for a little bit. Just reset.
Yeah. And it's like you put headphones on, listen, you can have someone speaking to you or you can just have ocean
Yeah.
sounds. there's so many different things out there, especially on YouTube, that just
Oh, that's
whatever
true.
speaks to you, you know.
I've
I
been
love it.
trying to stay. I've been trying to staying off social media a little
Hmm.
bit, especially the Facebook. It's too. What's the word I'm looking for? It's not secure. Like
Right.
their algorithms and all that stuff is really hackable. I'm like, there's some team in Russia or some team in like China is doing this to me. I gotta get away from it.
Right. I definitely believe that that's happening 100%. I do believe there is a narrative to try and make us feel a little crazier than we
Mm-hmm.
are and make us second guess ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think it's healthy to get off social media. Um, 100%. I like stuff like Instagram just because it's more visual.
It's just pictures.
And then, and I put stuff up there on mine for like, I've turned my Instagram and just really art related stuff,
Okay.
and I've held strict to that for me, just to be like only art related things can be on here, and that's it.
Yeah.
So,
That's how I look at my Instagram. Like the fully automatic is more of like that particular business, and
hmm,
then mine is like behind the scenes. Like
I love
the
it.
backdrop of what that is, which is what my life is the backdrop of that business, and so it creates different things. It makes me take pictures, just look and pause, and I wish people took just stop and like took pictures, like oh that looks cool, just hang on
I
to it.
love it.
Because I remember back in the day, the idea was once we got away from an 8-day workday, 8 hour, I'm sorry, an 8 hour workday because of automation, we can
Hmm.
work less. And the idea was the extra time was going to be head towards the cultures. Learn science, read, take care of family, raise a family. You know what I mean? But the depression happened, and people were like, nope, don't
Hmm.
take away my 40 hours. I need this. And then we've been kind of stuck there ever
Right.
since.
Well, I think that you'll find that there's a lot of places that really people should be able to work from home. I do feel that people need to get out as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there should, if you implement structure that, like outdoor gatherings when we're back to the new
Yeah.
normal. But when we get back to that, I think you're going to see some changes. I really do. But I'm kind of optimistic when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to stuff like that, because I think there's going to be a lot of stuff that I think needed to be addressed, and something like this happening, especially globally, really pushes the narrative.
Yeah.
It pushes the needle. Like, nope, we got to fix it.
Yeah.
And so,
I think this
um, yeah.
showcases different personalities or can function different ways. You know,
Hmm.
some people may need the office to go to. Some people can do it from home, or we can split time. If it just
Yeah.
becomes a little more flexible, people I think become better workers. You know?
I 100% agree. Hmm. I think it's weird to keep someone in a cubicle for 8 hours a day with
Yeah.
maybe a 30-minute break. I always felt like, for me personally, had a lot of trouble with that as my day to day. It just felt unnatural to me, and to find out I wasn't the only one, because
Mm-hmm.
when I started in the workforce, people would call that, oh, you don't have a good work ethic, you're just
Yeah.
lazy if you feel that way. And that's, it's not true. It's just like people are built for different things. So I always was a big believer of, either three, how they do, you work 4 full 8-hour days a week, and the rest of the week you have off,
Mm-hmm.
or some kind of modifications through there. I think there should be an allowance for those kind of things. And I do think that, work from home should always be an option,
Yeah.
because you come to a cubicle, you're cramped, you can't move, you're exposed to all kinds of germs very
Yeah.
quickly, and yeah, and you're sharing keyboards with other people. They say you're not, but you really are. That's the reality of the jobs.
I remember at one place they got super weird about the bathroom door handles, but
Yeah,
everybody touched the screen on the copier. Like, you know what I mean? I was like, we don't wash this thing. Do you wash this thing? No one washes this thing. But everyone's all
right.
picky about the door handles. Like, oh, gee, and especially now when I go out to grocery shopping, you realize like, oh, I do touch like everywhere.
Yeah,
So it modifies my behavior, which is I guess is okay. It's not terrible.
yeah. It's not. I think, our body needs to fight off some type of germs, but this particular bug is
Yeah,
obviously a super bug, so it makes us completely look at things much differently. It's not like a normal
yeah.
thing at all. I know. I was going to say too. One thing too, I joined a bunch of friends in the community. Did this. I don't know. You don't know Jack game night.
Okay. Oh.
So we'll play that through
Oh, that's
like
fun.
Zoom
Yeah.
or Skype, and then we'll all like be talking back and forth and playing these random games on there, and that's a lot of fun too. So that's something a lot of people can do. Just get a crew together and just
Yeah, I've been seeing more and more of that
yeah.
popping up. So we'll see. I hopefully we'll see what happens. I think this is a prime time for like small businesses, like developers
Hmm.
and things, to, like shift. Like if you're in the live event industry, you will need to shift if you want to shift over to like a more virtual setting. And like there's different
Right.
social aspects to this kind of stuff as well. But this may take a little bit. But we're innovative, right? It's a good time
Yeah.
for it. Hard times
I,
spur it on.
yeah. No, it's an inspiring time. Even though we're going through a lot of tragedy, I think we also have to be able to balance and counterbalance that. Be like, well, what can I be doing? You know, sitting on social media reading news stories not conducive
Yeah.
mentally or to your positive energy or anything like that. So I think it's always good to have the balance. That's super important.
That's
And
true.
of course, all of this too. I know for me, I'm being able to connect with people I haven't been able to talk to in a long time. Because of this, I'm able to reach out and be like, hey, we haven't talked, and then get on
Yeah.
video with them too, or on the phone.
That's been, yeah, the telecom communicate industry is blowing up. Like being used everywhere. I haven't been on Skype as much as I have, or doing the video conferences as I have in the last like month or
Right.
so. Like I have it. I just never really use, because we go to all the events and things, and we see everybody, we hang
Right.
out, but those aren't there anymore.
Yeah, I was watching so Titan Comics here in Dallas.
Hmm.
They were doing an online auction.
Oh,
I
cool.
ended up getting a little something from their shop just to help support them, and it's cool just to see like because I don't want anything to happen to comic book shops at all,
Yeah.
and I know there's an inevitability there, but I don't want to see it happen. I think we have to have shops like that,
Hmm.
and you know it's I don't want to see it go to strictly online and things like that. So
Yeah.
I'll do what I can.
Things will. It's just things will change, and the market's shifting. You know,
Yeah,
we gotta get people to read more books and things like that, and just dive into it a little more. But we'll see.
that's the positive thing about the superhero films really taking off, though, is
Hmm.
that they've inspired a whole new generation to look deeper into these characters and to really want to understand the backstory of like Black Panther and you know Scarlet Witch and Black Widow and all these things. So I've definitely seen, even in going to the shop before quarantine, um, like a lot of like young kids just want to know more. Spider-Man,
Yeah.
everyone like,
Yeah.
tell me about Spider-Man. You know, it's like it's
They'll
so
really
cool.
dig into it. If it's tangentially related, like it works no matter
Yeah,
what. Uh, because and a lot of times, especially for like the TV series, that I realized the comics were filling in loopholes or filling in little backstory holes that the TV show couldn't, and so it gives them a more full experience for the franchise. I was like, oh, that's cool. That makes sense. That's the best way
yeah.
to do it.
And it's going to be cool because there's going to be a whole generation of kids now growing up who
Hmm.
probably knew the films and comics, and that's
Yeah,
going to breed a whole different kind of generation of. I'm pretty excited for that actually. So
they get to dive into all the genres and all the stories. You know, everything is cool. Like it's not a weird nerdy thing back in the day.
right, right, so true, and I love it. I think it's great, and I'm excited for that. I think it's going to be awesome. I really do.
Yeah. So let's start wrapping this up. We're hitting close to the
Yeah,
hour mark.
beautiful.
Talk about your book.
Yes. So, well, I illustrated a book. The book I illustrated is called Super Women, Superhero Therapy. It's written by the amazing Dr. Janina Scarlett. She has a PhD, and she specializes in depression, anxiety, mental wellness, mental well-being. And what she does is she has a number of books out there, and she uses pop culture as a way to identify different mental ailments and mental health awareness that is easily translatable that people connect to. You know, I can watch, you know, Harry Potter, or I can watch Star Wars, and I can connect to characters and be able to see what their struggles are and be able to maybe align with my own, for example. So I did the cover for the book and I did the interior illustrations. The book comes out next year in April, you know, hopefully. But the UK release is available through Amazon.uk. But if you want to wait until next year, we're going to do a full release on that. So I was very excited to be a part of that. But if anyone's interested in checking out some of the art or the book, if you go to my Instagram, which is Jedigoddess Christy,
Yeah, down
where's
here.
my fingers? And there's a link right at the top that'll get you to the Amazon link so you can take a peek and look at all that good
Cool.
stuff.
That was
Yay!
fun. So that's a great book, especially nowadays. It's a big topic,
It's
and it's a good way to
it's
approach it. I
so
feel.
yeah, it's so on point right now given
Mm-hmm.
everything people are going through, and films are kind of a big part. That's one thing I'm seeing a lot. A lot of people are really going into films now and
Mm-hmm.
diving into those lists and connecting with those characters and stories and being inspired. That's what I'm seeing a lot of my feed when I'm on there. So that's, I think, really cool.
Yeah.
And this book just kind of fits right into that dynamic.
It's the film's an extension of our humanities and our our fears and our beliefs and all those things. Because I remember watching a documentary about horror films and how each generation of horror films would relate to something that's the zeitgeist of America and stuff like that. And so these are
100%.
our stories of ourselves, and yeah, I think we could. It's a good way to look at them to look back at us.
And, you know, films are metaphors.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of films with metaphors for believing in yourself, for hope, for, you know, understanding life is not perfect, but, you know, you rise above it. There's so many wonderful lessons. For me, start with the original Star Wars 4, 5, and 6. These films are all about hope.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, that's the message of them all. So that's what this really unifying, and that's what I really connected with even as a young kid. I could tell that's the message I got from it. So those kind of things are universal, and I think that's awesome. And keep watching and nerd out and have
Yeah,
fun.
keeps it all good. Well, cool. So, see, whenever you do your U.S. release, come back. We'll talk more about it. It'd be
Oh,
fun.
I'd
Do a
love
whole
to.
thing about the
100%.
the stuff. Cool, cool.
100%. I'm so excited about it. And hey, thank you so much for having me
Thank
and
you for coming
talking
on.
forever.
Yeah, it's been great. So everybody find links down the bottom, hit the buttons and things. I don't know where they are on the interface. Well, you guys
I love.
take it easy, stay safe, wash your hands.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I went out
Yeah.
to the farmers market to pick up some like local produce, and they had a
Yeah.
sink out with soap and everything, and they had like a hand wash station. I was like, "Oh, this is dope! Yeah, let's do this everywhere outside. This is cool. I can
That's how
dig
you
this.
do it.
Yeah,
Let's do it.
completely cool. Support your local businesses.
100%. 100%. Check on your local businesses. They're the ones who need your love right now.
Yeah,
So
for real.
100%. Whatever you can do, even if you have to share them, you know, do what you can.
Do it like being in design and marketing. Just think about the
Yeah.
algorithms and just play with it just a bit for your friends.
Yes. Oh, one more thing. I have free shipping now on all my
Ooh,
art prints on my store.
cool!
So if you go to JediGoddessArt.com, free shipping on all art prints. So,
Yay!
ta-da! Speaking of, just shameless plug. There you go.
Oh, of course. That's what it's for. I'm gonna hit the